Donald Trump paid a visit to our members of military in Iraq. This was the first time that he actually visited a combat zone. And it seemed as though everything went okay until we heard from Iraqi politicians who felt that Trump was arrogant and who felt that Trump actually violated the sovereignty of Iraq. So now there is some discussion about what lawmakers in the country can do to essentially push US troops out of Iraq. Let me give you the details. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, I think that his visit to the troops was in some ways overly criticized. Even on Fox News, they're saying, oh, it was disrespectful to the troops to talk about politics. Look, it's Trump. He can't help himself. Of course, he's going to go brag and he's going to talk about his decision to withdraw from Syria. And he did the usual things about how, people won't pay for stuff, so we're not going to be suckers anymore, and we're going to leave Syria. And the neocons at Fox News are like, no, you can't say that. Then you're saying that their lives were wasted for nothing. No, that's just the way that you justify the endless wars. So I think that they were nitpicking on that. He told an outrageous lie about how much the troops are getting paid. That they're not nitpicking. That was a terrible lie. We'll get to that later in the program. But I did not. So I actually thought it was a rare situation where he was being overly criticized. But I did not expect what happened with Iraq because we didn't know the details of how he went to Iraq, and of course, as usual, with almost no planning, not letting our allies know, and now it has had severe consequences. I'm actually thrilled about it because we might now have to leave Iraq, which I want to leave Iraq. So it's a lucky turn of events for us, but not the right way to do US foreign policy.
So what I'm gonna do is give you the reasoning that most news outlets are essentially sharing, the narrative that's being created to give the reasoning for the Iraqis wanting the US to pull out. Then I'm gonna give you the reality, okay?
Yeah.
So first, the Iraqi lawmakers demanded that US forces leave the country in the wake of this surprise visit by Trump. The politicians denounced the visit as arrogant and a violation of Iraqi sovereignty. So because of the fact that Trump was scared to visit Iraq, and let's keep it real, I mean, he was pretty clear in that he was fearful about visiting a combat zone. There were extra security precautions taken prior to the visit. So for instance, it was a surprise visit, and the prime minister of Iraq was not even notified until 2 hours before Trump had landed. Trump also had complained about how scary it was flying to Iraq on Air Force One. Anyway,
he only stayed for 3 hours. So look, normally what you do is, yes, you take precautions. Of course, Bush did, Obama did, and the military is not going to jeopardize the commander in chief, and it would be disastrous. But they weren't like scared to death of ever going to visit the troops. So they took normal precautions and then normal diplomacy to tell our allies in the country we're coming, and I'm sure they have a reasonable lead time for telling them. It doesn't have to be weeks in advance. Things could leak. We understand that. That's normal. But different reports from White House insiders saying Trump for 2 years did not visit, which was very unusual, did not visit the troops anywhere. And he literally said it was because he was worried about his own safety. Look, that's why he didn't go to Vietnam. That's why he pretended to have bone spurs. He is a coward. And so he's like, okay, we're gonna go in, but don't tell anybody in Iraq. We'll tell them 2 hours before we land. And then he said, we'll make the prime minister come to us. But you have no idea where the Iraqi prime minister is.
So again, the Iraqi prime minister finds out 2 hours before Trump lands that Trump is on his way. And then Trump demands that the prime minister meet him at the airbase that he was at. And the prime minister is in a different part of the country, so he was unable to do so, and they had to settle for a phone call. Now, all of these Iraqi politicians are arguing that that was a violation, that it was an arrogant thing to do, that it was disrespecting the sovereignty of Iraq. But there's another layer to this that I think is important, and that other layer involves Iran. So some of these politicians, in fact, the most vociferous ones, are aligned or allied with Iran. And Trump is not a fan of Iran. That is the reasoning he gives for our involvement in Yemen, that he wants to fight Iran's influence in Yemen by helping with the Saudi-led coalition. And so here you have Iraqi politicians who are fans of Iran, who want to work with Iran, and then you have Trump, who's very vocal in his disdain for Iran. So I think that's really the underlying issue here. And then you add that extra layer of Trump's arrogance, and they don't like it, and so they want him out.
Yeah, so to give them their point of view a little bit more credence, but overall I 100% agree with Anna. So imagine if the foreign leader of a different country, obviously, wanted to visit the US and just wouldn't tell us. And then he lands in Texas, and 2 hours before he lands, he says, hey, Trump, like, come visit me in Texas, okay? I demand that you come here. Trump's like, what are you talking about? I'm in Florida, I'm in Washington, I'm in the middle of doing things. I didn't even know you were coming. What, you're just gonna pop in here and then demand that I go to visit you? Yeah, it's definitely insulting, and we wouldn't tolerate it. So now, but the underlying cause is definitely more important. And so what happened here was, so we have a very large bloc that is pro-Iranian, and it's actually the Bush administration that screwed this up in the first place, because they're like, oh, we'll bring democracy to Iraq and then they'll be on our side. No, Iraq is 60% Shia. If you have real democracy, they'll be with the Shias, and the Shias are on the side of Iran. Oops. Dick Cheney was so, look, he was bright in other ways, but he just was so arrogant. So I don't want to say dumb, Bush was dumb, but Cheney was so arrogant, he's like, no, we'll just put in Ahmed Chalabi and we'll have a puppet in there and he'll do as he's ordered. They're like, no, we're not gonna, Chalabi's a CIA guy. We don't accept that. So Chalabi lost, and now, yeah, the Shia rule Iraq. What did you think was gonna happen? But even more important, the guy who won the election, his party won the election, is Moqtada al-Sadr. He is the leader of the Mahdi army. If you guys remember from back in the day when the Iraqi insurgency was at its height, our #1 enemy was the Mahdi army. They now rule Iraq. They kicked us out once. Now Moqtada al-Sadr is back going, hey, listen, I have the largest bloc in the Iraqi parliament. You want to roll? And now they're saying America will leave Iraq one way or another. So we've got 5,500 troops there, and Trump, as usual, didn't do his homework, too scared to do things right, and now has caused a total diplomatic mess, which might get us kicked out of Iraq. Hey, they got a democracy. If their parliament votes to kick us out, we got to go. Now, again, I don't mind. Progressives shouldn't mind, because I'm tired of these wars. I don't want to be in the middle of Iraq. Okay, great. We gave them democracy. All right, look, it is what it is. Now Moqtada al-Sadr is in charge. So if you didn't want that, you shouldn't have invaded Iraq in the first place. And you shouldn't have started all these terrible wars.
So I'm stuck on your point about how, as usual, Trump hasn't done his homework.
Yeah.
I mean, look, for an average person, this is a pretty complex story. Understanding, the populist majority in the country right now, who they're aligned with, the relationship that the United States has with Iran. I mean, to think that someone like Trump could comprehend even the basics of this conflict, it's just inconceivable. I don't think he saw this coming. I think he showed up thinking, hey, we're helping the Iraqis in terms of fighting ISIS. We've been pretty successful in doing that. He's feeling really good about himself. And then a day later, he's hit with all this criticism. But again, that criticism has, in my opinion, way more to do with Iran's influence with this populist bloc than anything else. I mean, yeah, the US is arrogant. I mean, politicians from the US have always been arrogant. They show up to Middle Eastern countries and they do whatever the hell they want. So the idea that they would be angry simply because Trump showed up, or gave word 2 hours before he landed, I mean, might have irritated them. But again, it's about Iran. I want to give you a few quotes, actually. So the leader of the Islam parliamentary bloc, so that's the bloc that we've been talking about. His name is Sabah al-Sadi. He called for the parliament to meet to discuss the blatant violation of Iraq's sovereignty and to stop these aggressive actions by Trump, who should know his limits. Also, he says that Parliament must clearly and urgently express its view about the ongoing American violations of Iraqi sovereignty. And as Cenk had alluded to earlier, Iraq's Shiite militias, also known as the PMF, many of which are supported by Iran, oppose the presence of US troops in the region. The PMF was made formally part of the security forces this year after helping the military defeat the Islamic State in Iraq in 2017.
Yeah, look, it's really sad that I know more than the president of the United States. He has access to thousands of people at his disposal, to national security secrets that I couldn't begin to know. All I did was I followed the news and politics for the last 20 years. So we reported on the Iraq war every day. So I know exactly who Moqtada al-Sadr is, and I know what allegiance he has to us and Iran, which is pretty much zero to both, by the way. And he won the elections by being against America and Iran. But the prime minister is more aligned with Iran. But Moqtada al-Sadr is a Shia, and so he kicked out America in the first place. He has no love for us. And the first thing I would have asked if I was president is, how will Sadr react? The second thing I would have asked is, how will the prime minister react? Because Sadr has more people in parliament than the prime minister does. So I know it's a weird twist if you're used to our system of government. And then I would wonder about the consequences. But the president is a simpleton. And so he doesn't think through any of these things. He doesn't know any of these things and doesn't care to know any of them. Why do you think he creates one mess after another after another? That's what happens when you don't care to do your job. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.